June 11, 1944. 1942 hours. Western Front, near the battered remains of Trois Arbres Ridge. The air held the thick smell of cordite and damp soil. Fog lay heavy over the no-man's land, a pale sheet of shifting vapor that swallowed shapes and bent sound into strange directions. Allied patrols had spent the last 2 weeks watching men vanish into that haze. German runners slipped across the perimeter with practiced ease, relaying artillery coordinates and troop counts to waiting batteries hidden beyond forest lines. Every hour lost another trench section to shelling that seemed too precise for chance. Private Thomas Miller crouched inside a shallow listening post dug into clay that clung to boots like wet cement. His unit had lost 13 men in 3 days. Each death came at dusk, the same brief window when light bled out of the sky and shadows mixed with earth until they were one. Rifles saw nothing. Spotters stared into blank haze until flares lit corpses they never heard. Command blamed discipline. Soldiers blamed darkness. Miller blamed something more specific. They were fighting an enemy who understood sound. He was an architect before the war. A junior designer at a Boston firm that specialized in auditoriums, libraries, and private concert halls. He spent nights drawing wooden baffles to break echoes and mornings testing vibration through concrete floors. War drafted him without ceremony. Now his hands that once measured acoustics held a Lee Enfield and a pocket knife dulled from field sharpening. He still listened the same way. He noticed wind pitch inside trench corners, the change in footstep tone on packed earth versus fresh mud. Where others stared into fog, Miller heard distance. Higher ranks dismissed it. Infantry doctrine said visual confirmation came first. A target unseen was a target unknown. Orders carried more weight than instinct. Yet each night the Germans proved vision was worthless once fog settled low. Scouts crawled through grass, recorded trench numbers, then slipped back out like smoke. Shells landed with surgical accuracy the next morning. Miller knew why. Sound became the only reliable pathfinder after light died. His observation turned to obsession after Sergeant Collier, the squad's only veteran from North Africa, was found 10 meters beyond the wire with a neat hole through the temple. No one saw the shot. No one heard the rifle. Collier had been moving toward a shape spotted too late. The Germans let him close, then removed him with economy. The message was quiet but brutal. Fog belonged to them. Miller refused to accept helplessness. He gathered scraps from bombed farmhouses, twisted roofing nails from collapsed sheds, and pocketed sheets of corrugated tin left half buried under rubble. While others smoked, he bent metal into shallow curves. While the platoon slept, he tapped panels with pebbles, listening to resonance and wavelength. Tin flexed at certain points and amplified faint vibration. He remembered a lecture from his university days. Material shape influenced reflection. Angles turned noise into signal. His first attempt looked like rubbish. 2 bent sheets lashed to wooden stakes with salvaged field wire. He set them facing no man's land, angled inward like a funnel. A crude acoustic mirror. When wind hit it, the rig hummed like a tired engine. Still, Miller heard something the others missed. Boots brushing grass. A buckle scraping stone. Far away but present. Sound traveled along tin, louder at the center point where a man could place his ear. It was not perfect. It rattled in gusts. Rain turned it into a drum. Command laughed the first time he presented it. Officers called it civilian fantasy. He kept working. Every dusk, every shift, adjusting curvature by millimeters. He tested distance by tossing pebbles and measuring the echo return. He dug shallow pits beneath the panels to block wind vibration. Slowly the rig became more stable. Where a normal ear heard nothing, Miller detected scuff patterns and direction change. He mapped noise into angles. If contact came from the left plate, runner vector likely northeast to southwest. If sound peaked between both plates, target moved parallel to trench face. He recorded findings in a torn sketchbook smudged with earth. His method earned mockery from some, curiosity from a few, suspicion from command. War punished failure, but it had little patience for new ideas. Officers feared looking foolish more than losing ground. Miller waited for proof that could not be argued. Proof came in blood. On June 17, 2-man patrol Bravo never returned. They left at 20:02 hours. At 20:14, muffled rifle cracks echoed once, then twice, then silence. Bodies were found at dawn, stripped of maps. Command realized German runners no longer probed trenches. They studied men. They listened back. Perimeter weaknesses were known. Enemy infiltration tightened like a noose. Panic crept through dugouts. It smelled like wet wool and old iron. Fog deepened each night. By June 21, Visibility shrank to 5 meters. Snipers fired blind and hit nothing. Mines were planted, yet runners traced paths between them with uncanny accuracy. Someone on the German side mastered low-light movement. Someone heard what the Allies could not. Miller knew acoustic warfare had begun whether officers admitted it or not. He rebuilt his tin assembly larger. 3 plates now, each angled like petals of a steel flower. Range improved. He picked up brush movement 40 meters out. He heard cloth snag wire. Twice he alerted patrols. Twice squads responded too slowly. Doctrine held them back until visual confirmation arrived. Confirmation never came. Another man died. Tension climbed inside the unit like pressure inside a sealed pipe. Men whispered that trenches were cursed. They said Dusk hunted them. They said the fog had ears. No one mentioned fact. No one said their defense relied on eyes alone in a world where sight was stolen. Miller waited. He watched weather charts pinned inside the command dugout. Forecast promised 3 days of dense evening mist. Perfect. He petitioned Lieutenant Arden for trial deployment. Arden refused. Risk too high. Recognition too uncertain. That night Miller carried the device forward without permission. Night fell without wind. Visibility dissolved into a gray wall 5 meters thick. Men moved as silhouettes and spoke in quiet tones that scattered into fog. Miller sat near the forward wire with his rig planted like a silent machine waiting to hear the world. 3 tin sheets curved toward open land. Stakes anchored deep. Vibration wire pulled tight across the frame. One ear pressed to the polished center, one hand marking angle lines on his notebook. 1954 hours. Usual time of first movement. German runners preferred this window. Too dark for aim, not dark enough for flares. Artillery had not begun. All that moved was air, thick and damp, sticky against skin. Miller held breath and listened. Nothing. Then slight. A faint scrape, grass against fabric. He noted angle. 10 degrees left off plate 2. Possibly one man. Pace slow. Cautious. He whispered coordinates to Corporal Hayes, the only man who trusted him. Hayes relayed to Lieutenant Arden. Arden dismissed it. No visual, no shot. Miller returned to listening. The sound faded. Either the runner stopped or retreated. He could not confirm. At 2011 hours he heard new noise. Different rhythm. 2 sets of boots, close together, weight shifting quickly. Brisk movement. He marked 40 degrees. Right of plate 1. Hayes moved a sniper team into position though orders forbade firing without sight. Miller felt pressure build. If he was wrong, Hayes faced tribunal for insubordination. If right, they might break the pattern that killed so many. The sound stopped again. Silence. Fog swallowed everything. Miller did not blink. He waited. A minute passed. Then another. Then the metal sheet picked up soft breath, distant but sharp through the funnel. Someone crouched in grass. Close. 30 meters. Maybe less. He mouthed numbers to Hayes. Hayes signaled the sniper. The sniper exhaled slow, rifle resting on sandbag edge, scope nearly useless in dim haze. 3 seconds. Then break. A body shifted. A buckle clicked. Miller whispered one word. Fire. The sniper shot. Crack echoed through fog like a hammer on steel. A shape jerked upright then collapsed. Miller heard grass flatten. 1 runner down. Possibly 2. Perimeter held. But no one celebrated. Not yet. Proof remained invisible. Arden arrived furious. Violation of engagement rules. Unauthorized discharge. Risk of counterfire. He spoke of procedure and chain of command. Miller said nothing. Hayes stayed silent. Sniper kept his eyes down. Then a flare launched from German side. Light streaked overhead and drowned fog in white glare. 2 bodies lay near wire. One held map satchel. Arden's anger turned to doubt. Men gathered around Miller's rig with new eyes. They saw not scrap metal but tool of survival. It still rattled in wind but tonight it worked. Word spread along trench. Some disbelief, some awe. A few men who mocked him earlier now asked questions. How far could it hear? How many plates could be added? Could range double? Miller did not answer. He only said night was not over. Next evening thick fog returned. Visibility worse. Germans adapted. No movement until late. Miller sat with rig listening hard. Rain started at 21:02 hours, soft at first, then heavy enough to drum metal. Sound blurred. Range lost. Runners could exploit storm to cross. Risk high. Miller made fast adjustments. He stuffed cloth between supports to dampen rain vibration. He shifted angle downward to catch ground transfer instead of air wave. Dirt carried footsteps sound better under moisture. 2 minutes work. He tested by tapping soil at 8 meters. Plate picked up tone with more clarity than before. Improvised adaptation worked. Hayes nodded approval. At 21:19 hours he detected soft crunch of wet mud. Space steps. Single runner. Direction west of main wire. Miller relayed angle. Sniper moved to intercept. No shot. No view. Runner paused. Miller adjusted, pressed ear deeper. Heard faint metal ring. Possibly canteen. Second detail. Weight suggests adult male, not scout youth. He tracked movement by pitch. Snap. A twig. Clear signal. Hayes raised arm. Sniper fired once. Nothing. Mississippi runner sprinted. Miller called new vector. Sniper shifted 3 degrees. Fired second shot. Thud in soil. Silence. Then low groan. Fog kept shape hidden but sound told truth. Target hit not clean. Hayes and 2 riflemen crawled forward. They dragged the German back. Young maybe 20. Uniform soaked, boots worn, map in oil case strapped to chest. He died before reaching trench. Arden watched body taken away. He looked at Miller with expression half respect, half fear. The rig changed battlefield logic. Night was no longer German ground. Word traveled beyond platoon. Company command called demonstration. Miller set rig at forward trench. Officers observed through rain veils. He dropped pebble at 60 meters. Sound returned clear. He snapped twig at 80. Muffled but audible. Rig pass test. Orders shifted. Visual confirmation rule relaxed for Dusk operations. Acoustic detection authorized under Miller guidance. His role changed overnight. No longer just rifleman. Now advisor for patrol defense. He spent hours refining angles, drafting templates for tin assembly. Units scavenged metal from village ruins. Soon 4 rigs operated along line, staggered like ears across battlefield. Each new piece improved signal capture. Germans noticed. Runners attempted approach slower. Sometimes crawling. Sometimes wrapping boots in cloth to muffle steps. Miller adjusted again. He tuned plates to detect low-frequency ground tremor. He built small wooden frame to reduce wind hum. Acoustics became weapon. Fog lifted occasionally but pattern remained. Darkness favored ears. Sight returned late. Men spoke of tin flowers listening for death. Snipers trusted Miller's call more than eyes. Arden accepted innovation but insisted caution. He worried enemy would respond harder when they learned Allied trenches listened back. Night of July 4th confirmed that fear. Heavy artillery barrage struck second trench line. Not random. Targeted. German observers likely tracked rig positions. 1 plate damaged. 1 post snapped. Miller salvaged parts, rebuilt through firelight. Enemy tried to blind their new sense but sound still reached. Next dusk brought the moment that defined everything. 1947 hours. Clear sky earlier, now fog creeping low and fast. Reports claimed major German movement planned. Runners expected. 1 breaking through could call artillery on supply convoys. Miller's rig stood repaired, 3 plates gleaming dull under fading light. He steadied breath and placed ear against center. 1951 hours. First sound arrived as faint ripple, like fabric sliding over stone. Distance unclear. Miller focused. He filtered wind, tuned mind to ground tremor. 1 runner, maybe 2. Pace steady, not cautious. This was not simple reconnaissance. Messenger mission. Urgent. He signaled Hayes with raised fingers. 3 taps meant movement right flank, angle near plate 1. Hayes nodded and positioned sniper rigs along parapet. Rigs wiped fog from scope though it would show nothing. He trusted voice more than glass. Minutes passed without escalation. Miller tracked sound as it drifted closer, now the scrape of leather, now controlled breathing. Runner switched pace. Slower. Checking for noise traps. Miller whispered update. Ridge beyond wire faded to outline. Fog thick as wool. 20:03 hours. New sound. Different rhythm. Second vector northeast. Possibly distraction team. Germans tried split run. 1 decoy left, real courier right. Miller decided primary threat near first vector based on footfall weight and stride cadence. He ordered rifle team hold on northeast runner until confirmation. He pressed ear to plate. Runners paused. Silence. Then whispering in German, too faint to decipher but present. 2 men communicating. 1 likely guide. They mapped Allied line from earlier breakthrough. Now attempting repeat. Miller gripped pencil so hard it snapped. He breathed slow. He waited for signal. It came at 20:08. A small stone knocked aside. Sharp click. Someone misstepped. Runner froze. Miller heard shallow breath through rig. He whispered quick coordinates and fired hand flare to left sector to draw eyes away from main approach. Diversion worked. Germans shifted right, thinking flank exposed. Riggs took aim blind. Miller murmured corrections. 1 pace forward. 2 left. Slight dip in terrain. When grunt of exertion reached through tin, Riggs fired. Shot cracked through dark. Echo rang across steel panels. A body fell hard. Grass flattened. Groan cut short by second shot as Riggs corrected elevation. Second runner fled. Miller tracked footfall cadence, sharp and panicked. He relayed direction. Rifleman intercepted near wire. Brief. Struggle. Then silence. Victory muted. Men did not cheer. They listened for retaliation. Fog swallowed sound again. Miller noted rig resonance dampened. Possibly signal interference from terrain dip. He adjusted plate tilt 4 mm. Rig regained clarity. Arden inspected bodies. One carried encrypted map roll marking Allied trench depth. Immediate threat neutralized. Arden gave Miller first official commendation. Short words. Flat tone. But meaning heavy. Authority now recognized ear over eye. News spread up command chain. Requests for rig pattern arrived from adjacent battalions. Miller drafted basic blueprint in dugout under lantern light. Corrugated tin needed. Wood frame. Ground anchor stakes. Optimal curvature radius 92 cm. Plate angle 38 degrees inward. Listening point position 22 cm behind apex. Small details he learned through failure. By mid-July, entire sector tested acoustic mirrors. Runners caught before reaching wire. German infiltration attempts fell from 6 nightly to 1 weekly. Artillery fire less accurate. Fog lost advantage. But war shifted. Germans adapted again. They trained silent messengers. Men moved barefoot. Cloth-wrapped feet. Breathing controlled. Steps feather light. Standard rig struggled to detect. Miller responded. He inverted one plate to catch ground vibration instead of air resonance. Soil carried pressure change. Bare footsteps registered as faint pulse. He added metal tension strip to amplify low-frequency wave. New prototype tuned like drum skin. August 2nd. First test. Footfall detected at 50 meters. Faint but traceable. Ace called it second sight. Yet hostility grew. Some officers resented civilian idea overtaking doctrine. One major questioned relevance. Claimed chance success not method. Demanded proof under pressure. Miller accepted challenge. Test staged near ravine with heavy vegetation. Runner team volunteered to simulate infiltration. Fog natural. Conditions real. Miller deployed rig. An hour into trial he detected runner path divergence and predicted angle within 2 degrees. Rifleman intercepted before crossing marker line. Major silent afterward. No praise given. No further objection raised. Recognition increased. Supply delivered better tin sheets. Engineers consulted Miller. He trained squads to listen. Men learned to interpret vibration like language. But innovation painted target. Germans observed new trench patterns. Spotted glint of tin under moon. Snipers attempted to shoot plates. 2 rigs damaged. Miller redesigned supports lower and covered frames with mud to reduce shine. Enemy escalated. Night of September 14th. Heavy patrol attacked right flank. Intention clear, destroy acoustic assets. Shells landed close. Trenches shook. Miller crawled under fire to retrieve damaged rig. Haze covered with rifle. 2 shells burst nearby. Dirt rained down. Rig partially crushed. Miller dragged it back and rebuilt through dawn. Men began calling him Earman quietly. Respectfully. His invention saved lives, though bodies still fell when fog thickened or when artillery answered too fast. Then came dusk that defined legacy. October 5th. Reports warned of imminent German breakout attempt. Fog thicker than any in months. Visibility 1 meter. Rifles useless. Command assigned Miller primary detection responsibility along entire sector. 4 rigs linked by wire relay. Teams listened in rotation. Hayes oversaw sniper pairing. Rigs anchored central kill point. 1939 hours. Dead quiet. Even wind absent. Miller adjusted plates by feel. Moisture beaded on tin like cold sweat. Soldiers held breath. Every sound mattered. 2000 hours sharp. He caught faint grass ripple. Not footstep. Something brushing low. Crawlers. 3 at least. Trying new tactic. Slow belly movement to muffle weight transfer. Hard target. Sound profile shallow, frequency low. He tuned rig lower. Pressed ear deep. Heard heartbeat like rhythm of body dragging. Steady. Direction north flank near old crater. He relayed. Hayes sent silent team to intercept. No shoot order until certain. 5 minutes. Contact. Knife struggle. Germans withdrew. Minor wounds. Interception successful. But this was probe not objective. 2017 hours. True event began. Single runner fast, heavy stride, confident. Not stealth. Intent to break line and run deep to rear command. Danger highest. Miller felt vibration surge through plate. Strong. Urgent. He mapped angle instantly. 46 degrees left of plate 3. Distance closing from 80 meters to 50 quickly. Fog absolute. No silhouette. He whispered target vector. Hayes signaled rigs. Sniper position behind sandbag arc, rifle tight to shoulder, breath calm. Runner accelerated. Miller heard heartbeat through ground tremor. Rare. Intense. Faint metal clink. Possibly message tube. 40 meters. 30. Miller nearly shouted correction but held discipline. He gave short crisp update. Rigs adjusted scope 2 inches. 25 meters. Breaking point. Shot window minimal. Miller exhaled once. Fire. Rigs fired. Shot ripped through fog sharp and violent. Echo caught plate edges ringing like struck bell. For a breath there was no answer, only still air. Then the unmistakable collapse of a running body. Heavy. Sudden. Grass bent under weight. Metal case clattered twice before settling. The trench held collective silence. Men stared into fog as if waiting for phantom to rise again. Miller closed eyes, pressed ear back to plate. He expected stillness. Instead he heard something new. Not silence. Movement. Slight. Fragile. Runner not dead. Hit but crawling, dragging message tube through mud. He updated vector. Hayes signaled rigs for correction shot. But fog dense. Sound faint. Distance uncertain. Miller increased sensitivity by angling plate 3 degrees left to catch body shift. New resonance clearer. Breathing ragged. Slow. He pinpointed 15 meters beyond original strike. Rigs fired again. Second echo thundered through tin like rolling drum. Then complete quiet. No breath. No drag. Sound field empty. Hayes sent retrieval team. They crawled through haze with wire lines tied to trench posts to guide return. Minutes stretched heavy. Then figures emerged hauling limp form. German courier maybe 30 years old, mud smeared across uniform, boots cut thin from long marches. Message tube strapped to chest. Blood at ribs from first round. Head wound from second. Dead now. Arden arrived without speaking. He took message tube, opened it under lantern behind firing step. Inside lay drawn artillery map marking Allied supply convoys scheduled next morning. Strike would have killed hundreds if runner crossed line. Rig prevented disaster. Echo shot validated. Officers knew. Soldiers knew. Even Arden knew. Miller stood clean in cold night air, hands numb. Rain started slow then heavy. Tin plates trembled under drops like distant footsteps. He listened again. No more movement. Sector secure. For first time in months, trench felt still. Men breathed easier. Hayes clapped Miller's shoulder once, firm. Riggs offered cigarette wordless. Acceptance plain. Command spread rig deployment across division. Acoustic detection became doctrine reference, though manuals credited collective intelligence not single innovator. Miller did not care. Survival mattered more than glory. In following weeks enemy artillery less precise. Infiltration attempts rare. Germans learned Dusk no longer shield. Many believed fog betrayed them though truth sat in 3. Bent tin plates and a quiet man listening hard. Winter arrived early. Cold sharp. Metal contracted. Rig resonance altered. Miller adapted by lining rear with cloth insulation to stabilize tone. Frost ridges changed ground tremor. He recalibrated by tapping frozen soil to predict frequency shift. Every field condition taught him something. He grew thin from long nights without sleep. Eyes rimmed red. But ears sharp. Soldiers rotated duty but Miller remained constant. He trusted no one else with plate calibration. War demanded perfection too often. January push forced relocation. Trench abandoned for hill line. Acoustic mirror disassembled and carried piece by piece under fire. Mortar shell destroyed plate 1. Miller salvaged scraps, hammered dense flat, reshaped curve by memory. Time short. He built new frame by next dusk. During retreat phase rig used not for defense but withdrawal monitoring. Detected pursuit teams. Allowed orderly fall back. Saved more men than anyone counted. But strain took toll. Miller began hearing faint ringing even at rest. Tinnitus born from metal echo nights. He hid condition fearing replacement. Hayes knew but said nothing. Battle needed his ear. March skirmishes intensified. Snowmelt turned ground to sucking mud that dampened tremor detection. Miller compensated by increasing plate spread angle to capture wider field. Signal weaker but usable. Even damaged system better than blind patrols. Spring offensive reversed front. Allies advanced through villages once shelled into bone piles. Miller carried rig ahead of infantry to predict ambush. Twice he sensed hidden squads before contact. Twice platoon bypass trap. Officers finally recognized capability beyond trench. He received field citation though modest. Proper credit buried under war noise. Yet every saved life echoed through memory like resonant steel. End of war approached. Miller demobilized with chronic ear damage but no fanfare. Rig stored in depot crate labeled, Acoustic Detection Experiment, Western Sector. Few historians mentioned it. Dominant narratives favored tanks, planes, artillery. Not tin sheets and quiet patience. He returned to architecture. Designed libraries again. Wife said he listened too intensely to walls as if expecting enemy in plaster. He smiled soft, said nothing. Years later declassified archives mentioned echo shot only as side note. Innovative field acoustic experiment aided perimeter defense, July 1944. No mention of one man who built it by hand. Yet old veterans remembered. On rare reunion nights they spoke softly of Dusk where eyes failed but sound guided rifles. They spoke of a quiet architect who taught trenches how to hear. They said survival sometimes came in sheet metal ripple and heartbeat through ground. Miller died aged 73. Deaf in one ear, almost deaf in other. But clear memories remained until last breath. He once whispered that fog never scared him after that night. He said silence always spoke truth if you listened. Legacy small on paper. Immense in trenches. Still, one moment defined everything. The Dusk runner tagged by echo. The single shot that proved ear mattered when sight vanished. His invention saved supply convoys and perhaps turned small corner of war. Forgotten by many. Known by few. But truth rang like metal under rain. And on nights when veterans sat alone by window during storms, tin roof rumble sounded like footfall through fog again. Memory and sound fused. Almost peaceful. Private Thomas Miller, the man who heard war differently, left behind invention simple as scrap yet powerful as artillery map uncarried. His rig never earned medal. But men who survived owed quiet debt. Fog listens differently when shaped by hands that once built concert halls. Miller understood physics of echo, geometry of fear, weight of blood. He bent tin into ears large enough to hear death coming. And once at dusk he turned death around. The shot that ended the runner became legend only among those who stood in that line of mud. It was never printed in large type. It never reached headlines in New York or London. But inside that trench, in that hour where the world was made only of mist and breathing and waiting, it meant everything. After the runner fell, haze rolled over no man's land like a living thing. Fog grains carried smell of iron and wet grass. Miller remained at the listening point long after retrieval team returned with body and message. He pressed ear to plate, not seeking more targets but listening to silence. Silence was victory. The rig, once mocked as scrap, now stood guarded like artillery piece. Hayes ordered sandbags stacked around base to shield from shrapnel. Riggs proposed painting plates matte black to reduce moon glare. Engineers and rear copied design onto blueprints sourced from Miller's own sketches. They standardized curves, angles, stand heights, ear distance. What he did with instinct they turned into measurement. But measurement came after necessity. Miller remained front line to tune every copy. He knew sound lived differently in each position. Terrain changed tone. Soil moisture shifted resonance. A ridge created echo hollow that misled ear by 5 meters. A collapsed barn wall created false direction shift. Only Miller heard difference. Through autumn he traveled trench to trench teaching adjustments. Soldiers learned to read metallic hum like weather sign. They understood dull resonance meant rain on way, sharp tone meant dry ground ahead. War became not only seen but heard. He spoke little. Instruction short. Plate angle lower. Listen ground not air. Cloth here to dampen wind buzz. Men respected economy of words. In combat clarity saved. German units tried counter-tactics. First attempt muffled feet with wool. Miller detected tremor instead. Second attempt used diversionary noise, rattling tin scraps tied to animal to lure rifles. Miller distinguished chaotic jangle from human rhythm. Third attempt fired on rig positions with mortar. 3 mirrors shattered. Miller built new ones from wreckage. He worked under fire with hammer and pliers, shaping steel by lantern glow. Hayes guarded him with SMLE rifle. Riggs joked Miller built faster than Germans destroyed. It was true. Acoustic ear returned before night fully broke. By winter trenches froze and steel shrieked on cold nights with uncanny human pitch. Some soldiers said plates spoke ghosts. Miller laughed once quiet. He said ghosts sound like wind. Humans like weight. January thaw brought thick mud that swallowed sound. But Miller adapted, placing rig on wooden platform to isolate low-frequency movement. Enemy infiltration dropped further. Command credited weather. Soldiers credited tin. After war Miller left field with no ceremony. He wrote brief reports summarizing rig function. 23 pages. No flourish. Just angle charts, acoustic math, optimal positions. He submitted to officers. Paper filed. Forgotten. He returned to architecture firm. Designed quiet rooms for libraries where students studied without distraction. Walls tuned to absorb noise precisely as tin once amplified. Daily work peaceful. Yet he often drifted into pause as if listening to world under surface. Colleagues never knew history. He rarely told. Hayes wrote letter once describing that night. Said one man turned dusk against enemy. Miller kept letter in drawer until old age. Ink faded but memory sharp. Decades later historians reviewing archived field notes found mention of echo rig. Sparse detail. Few. Photographs. One grainy image showed Miller adjusting plate angle under tarp in rain. Expression unreadable. They dismissed project as minor experiment. Yet those who survived trench never forgot. They remembered cold steel underhand. Remembered how sound transformed battlefield when eyes blind. They remembered shot at dusk that stopped destruction of convoys. They remembered Miller's calm voice mapping footfall like surveyor in storm. And sometimes late at night in quiet home far from front, veterans thought they heard tin roof echo like runner in fog. Not real. Just memory, but memory enough to bring back beat of war and relief of survival.